This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
What would happen if you built a refuge for a persecuted people in a place where another people already lived? In the next few minutes, you'll learn why this moral quandary is at the root of the struggle between Israelis and Palestinians, and what you can do to help achieve a just peace for everyone in the region. First, there are a couple of things it's helpful to understand. One, many Jews fled harsh persecution in anti-Semitic Europe, especially the Nazi Holocaust. Zionists encouraged massive immigration to Israel-Palestine, at that time a British colony, where Jews had an age-old connection and where small Jewish communities had long existed among larger groups of indigenous peoples. But when the UN offered the Jewish immigrants the majority of the land for a new state called Israel, for the indigenous Palestinians who lived there, it was a massive destruction of life. They rejected the UN's partition plan, and several Arab states invaded the new state of Israel. Israeli forces essentially erased over 400 Palestinian villages and towns. By the end of the fighting, Israel controlled 78% of historic Palestine. And when 750,000 Palestinians who fled or were expelled during fighting tried to return to their homes where the new state now stood, they were permanently barred by the Israeli government. While over 100,000 of their relatives and neighbors who hadn't left became second-class citizens of the new state, along with the new Jewish majority. Today, Palestinian refugees and their descendants number in the millions. Most are in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and Jordan. Many are spread throughout the world, with millions still living in refugee camps, seeking to return to their homeland. To sum up, one group of refugees found a much-needed home, but in the process, a new group of refugees was created. Here's the second.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Philippines Uncut. I'm your host, Buddy Kunana. Now, in this show, we talk about everything under the sun, and tonight's topic is once again about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Now, last week we had part one of this show entitled Understanding the Israel-Palestine Conflict, and we had Jamal Ashley Abbas, who is a professorial lecturer of FIAT and FEU, and joining him was Hans Palacios, former student union leader. Today, we're going to have part two, and hopefully in this session, we're going to talk about more of the background of this conflict, but we're also going to talk about other things, like where this conflict is going, and how the ways that we can participate in ending the war and ending the violence that's been plaguing this area for many, many years. And joining us now on the show is still Hans Palacios, former student union leader. Thank you, Hans, for coming.
Good evening.
Good evening. And Ferdy Pasion, who's the chairman of the Nationalist Filipinos Against Foreign Intervention, or NADFIL.
Good evening, Buddy. Good evening, Hans. And good evening to all the televiewers.
Good evening, Ferdy. And, you know, Hans has been on this show several times in several capacities. And this is your first time on the show, and welcome here.
And I'm honored to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. Now let's have some short introductions. First, Hans, for those who are watching you for the first time now.
Yeah. People will be asking in what capacity I'm here. As I said, I had the good fortune of being a student student union leader in London, in a university which had over 80 nationalities. And as the student union leader, it was my job to make sure that there was always peace, harmony in the university. We had 2 campuses, we had 80 nationalities, a big American majority. However, we had a lot of Arabs, we had South Americans, we had Africans, we had Asians, and all that. And by understanding the different cultures, I was able to sit for 2.5 terms as a student council president in the beginning, until we transformed it into a union, so we could unionize the campuses.
Yes.
And that's where all this information and the knowledge of what was going on came to me. It was handed to me now,
Yes.
because I was listening to them. I got it firsthand.
And you've been following this issue ever since, no?
Yes,
The different developments in the
In
area.
fact, when I came back in '87, that was when Hamas really came in.
That's
into
when they
the fore.
created.
Yeah, it
Officially
was
created Hamas.
Officially created, yeah.
How about you, Ferdy? Tell us a bit about your background as the Nationalist Filipinos Against Foreign Intervention chairman and how you got involved in this issue.
Well, I also started out as a student leader in the University Belt area of Manila. And from that time on, I've been espousing issues, advocating patriotism and nationalism among our people. And also, I am a certified public accountant by profession, and I am a practicing Christian. So, as a Christian, we are taught to love Israel, but at the same time, we have to abide with what is written in the Bible. And what is happening now in Gaza is certainly not endorsed by the Bible. And it is clearly written in the Old Testament, which the Jews believe in, thou shalt not kill. And the only exception to this is when you are in self-defense.
Self-defense.
So, and I cannot say that bombing innocent people, children, and hospitals, and even United Nations installations is for self-defense. It's definitely an aggression.
Now, gentlemen, okay, let's recap first, because last week with Jamal, Ashley Abbas, we actually talked about the background of this problem. But for people who are tuning in now for the first time on the show, let's give them a little background about what's happening in this latest conflict and how it all began and what was the background of this. Why is there such a, this animosity apparently between the Israelis and the Palestinian people? Let's talk. Hans, you want to start it?
Yeah, as we explained last week, since 1947, when they came in, the aim of the Zionists was really to exterminate the Palestinians who were living in Palestine at that time.
Let's define first what you mean by Zionists, because a lot of people watching don't know what is a Zionist.
Yes, because Judaism is a religion. Zionism isn't. Zionism is the political arm of it. So what happened there was that when they came back if you trace back the roots of all of this, they were the ones who promised them the land was actually the British.
Because the British had mandate,
Yes.
had control
Yeah.
over Palestine,
Yeah.
what was then Palestine, and other areas in the Middle East. No?
And the Balfour Declaration, which actually was promised during World War I by the British to the Jews, on the condition that the Americans would be brought into World War I. You see, in World War I, during the time of the World War I, it was the British, French, and the Russians against the Germans, the Austro-Hungarians, and the Turks.
Yes.
The Germans had the upper hand.
Of course, it was the influx of the Yankees that
It-
turned the tide
yeah.
of the war.
Yeah.
Sure.
At that point, there was not even one foot of German soil that was infiltrated or the opponents had stepped on.
Okay.
So the offer was made that if we can bring in the Americans into this war, will you give us Palestine?
Yes.
Will you give us a Jewish state? And that was when the Balfour Declaration was firmed up.
Okay. And then okay, from there we'll move now. That was World War I, and then World War II came along.
In World War II, they came in and it was their land. So what these new Jews, actually they're not returning Jews. They're Khazars. If you look at the history, and there are books that the beauty of the internet now is that you can get the historical rundown on what's going on and
Yeah.
where this all stems from. So what happened was that these new Zionist Jews wanted it to be exclusively theirs. So what they did was to start creating conflict between the ones who were living there. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Let's rewind first. So we had World War II, and of course you all know about the awful things that happened to the Jews in World War II. They were.
But that was not without basis either.
Yes, but still, before we go to that, let's talk about the history. So there was really mass genocide against their kind by the Nazi regime, And because of this, after World War II, there was a whole, a lot of stateless people, a lot of stateless Jews in Europe, and the West didn't know what to do with them, no?
Yeah.
And so this actually really made the case for creating a state for them
Yeah.
all the more stronger.
Yes.
No? So what happened? In 48, they had a Jewish state,
Yes.
and so what happened? Tell us.
So the Arab countries all over Israel, they fought against Israel because, of course, they will not welcome a foreign element in their territory. So there was the first Israeli-Arab war.
Yes.
And then the next one was, I think, in 1967. And in 1967, the United Nations already came up with the formula of two-state solution, whereby Gaza and the West Bank will be the Palestinian state, and Israel will be the Jewish state, coexisting supposedly peacefully side by side together. But as we all know, there was this again 1973 war, and Israel kept extending its territory, and up to now they have certain footholds in the Golan Heights. Yeah. And so the problem now is that the Palestinians in Gaza are boxed in. Right now, the Egyptians are allied with the Israelis, and because they have overthrown Morsi, who was friendly with the Hamas. And Hamas, who took over Gaza, recently reconciled with Fatah, which is in control of the West Bank. And I think this is one of the factors which triggered the invasion, because Israel got fearful that when Hamas and Fatah will unite, it will be a stronger force, and the two-state solution will finally become a reality.
Yes, and there are rumors that Hamas was created with the backing of Israel
In
to
fact,
throw the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation
Hezbollah,
Organization, off.
All during this time, they didn't
Yeah.
want a strong PLO and a
Divide
strong,
and- divide and rule.
fundamental, yet they
Divide and rule.
divide and rule.
Yes.
In fact, we go back to 1967 when Israel won that war and they were in control of all these territories. General Peled, the father of Miko Peled, who is now doing the rounds in the circuit, who is talking about the atrocities, the lowdown on what really went on. He proposed a solution. He said, we have these territories.
Yeah.
Now we can go to the bargaining table. With this, we can go to the Arabs and say, this is our solution. We will put them in these lands. We will exist as one state. So that was his solution, which the Zionists had, turned down.
Of course,
because
yes.
he said, look, we can solve this problem now.
Yes.
We have these lands. We can gift it to them. And then the Arabs should accept it, because Palestinians are really Arabs, see?
They're all Arabs.
They're all Arabs.
Yes, because before the West divided it after World War II, they were all, there was no Palestine then, there was no Iraq,
Yes.
they were all Arabs.
That was the solution that was being proposed. Unfortunately, it was shut down. And then the next time they really wanted to talk in 2003, I think it was it anyway, when they were bringing 1993, when they were bringing Arafat into the bargaining table, they already had built on all these lands.
Yeah.
So everything was
It
established.
became moot.
Moot and
Yeah.
academic. No, there was nothing to talk about anymore.
Now, Ferdy, I want to point this out very strongly in this show, that a lot of people keep saying that this is a complex issue, that it's very difficult to understand, that there's so many sides to it, etc., etc. Now, quickly before we pause for a break, okay, what was essentially wrong or defective about the whole of what they did in 48 when they created the State of Israel? And they put all these Jews from Europe who were, obviously had suffered a lot, and put them in, hundreds of thousands came, and put them into Palestine. What was effective? What was wrong with that?
Well, we must look at it at the broader context of imperialism, because the Americans and the British, they're always together, So they wanted to get rid of the Jewish problem, and so they just placed the Jews there. But they also want to gain a foothold in the Middle East.
No, okay. Before we talk about it, what was wrong about or putting them in that piece of land? Okay, before we go to the geopolitics of it all.
Because there are existing
There you go.
population of Palestinians there.
Already people living on
Living
the
on
land.
on the land.
That's it.
Yeah.
That is the root of the problem, no?
It wasn't vacant, you know. The people in there.
It wasn't vacant, no?
Yes.
The minute you put some people on any piece of land already inhabited by other people, may problema. Like here in the Philippines, you have a squatter problem. Someone owns the land, you put squatters there, illegal settlers, it's going to be a problem.
But this problem is that the squatters didn't settle on vacant property. The owners were living there.
And they were kicked out.
And they were kicked out.
Hence, we have to pause for a break, but when we come back, more of understanding really what is the conflict between Israel and Palestine when we come back. Nangyayari tayo ba?